no matter what flavor you choose, you need to have a PMO that works with every stakeholder and make sure that the project's health is paramount. I heard a really cool um, phrase the other day from one of our clients, and they said we have to protect this project from the rest of the organization. I thought that was very prescient, and it was such a deep thought because the organization has its own life. It's got its own set of objectives. But it was cool because that statement was made in an executive meeting of their top executives of a very large organization, and they said that we have to protect this project from the rest of the organization. How do you do that? By having a PMO that does nothing but take care of the project. Jeremy, what else? What's next?
Let's look. I think good one.
Report. What's yeah? What's that?
Yes. So reports. Uh, Essentially, on the front end, this organization did not define what reports they needed,
Okay.
and when they went live, they didn't get all those reports done. It's really important when you're gathering requirements that you get the reports known ahead of time, and that you're also working with the vendor to make sure you're getting all the reports you need prior to go live. There's some reports in the public sector that you can't go without.
Yeah.
And it's vital that you, if the client can't do it or the vendor can't do it, they need to provide that report uh, by configuring it on your behalf and
Right.
making sure it gets outputted.
Right. So that needs to be defined in the requirements phase, right?
Yes.
Upfront, because like you said, there are so many reports that you absolutely need for compliance reasons, like state, federal, grant reporting. It gets really complicated when you are, let's say, you're a council of governments and you're serving, 50 plus um, member agencies, and you're getting federal funding. You need to track those grant funds by
Yes.
project, by agency, and it gets really complicated. And we had one instance where a selection was made, but there was no real definition of what those real key elements of project-based accounting were and how they were supposed to be reported. The other good example is we worked with a client in the South that is a Tennessee Valley Authority um, power reseller, and they had some very stringent reporting requirements that had held up modernization for their ERP system for many, many years. But it took some defining to about what exactly is the report, where's the data source, and in what format does TVA need it or any other federal agency. So if you don't define it up front, you're going to be in some trouble. It's not impossible to build reports in 2025. With tools like Power BI and AI enabled reporting tools, it's not such a big deal, but you really need to deeply understand what that is. And it's not, how do you do it? Did you just show samples of old reports and say, I need this report in the new system?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
See, you can provide the sample, and you should provide the sample, but you also need to sit down with the vendor team and have them understand it and break down the report with you.
Yeah.
I've seen so many occasions where in the past, before we worked with a client, they said we couldn't get these reports through. They just weren't making them correctly. And I asked, did you sit down and tell them exactly what you needed from the report? And they went, no, we just provided it and assumed they knew.
Yeah.
That vendors do conversions from many systems.
Yeah.
So there's times where they might not know exactly what a data field means from your system, and it really needs to be defined for
Yeah.
them.
But going back to the PMO function, that's something the PMO does, right?
Absolutely.
Making sure that the software provider is deeply understands the reporting needs or any other requirement, and that they're tracking that functionality or the report or the business process is actually being configured in the system before you go live. So, uh, great confessional. I hope they are doing well.
Yes.
What's this one?
Nuts.
You read
Why
that?
am I now hiring staff support at ERP? It was supposed to be easy.
Why am I now hiring staff to support an ERP? Was supposed to be easy. Yeah. So this is an emerging concept, right? Why do you implement new technology? You implement new technology to make life easy for your organization, to automate things, to not necessarily reduce headcount, but through attrition, maybe, like people retiring, you don't need to replace. There's a human element to this, and everyone's talking about how AI is going to replace human jobs. That's not all the way true, but it is happening in some cases. And a new ERP implementation should be an opportunity for you to redistribute work, automate processes, get away from manual processes. And so when you implement a new system, no CFO ever says, I'm going to add staff to support this system. There are instances where you may need to do that, but it's not default. So this complaint or confessional was they had to hire staff to support a system. And I wonder what the system was. Was it on-prem? Was it in the cloud? Because that's unusual to have to hire staff. There's a case to be made though for um,
During
systems,
implementation.
right? Or even after, right? When
Yeah.
when you need a system administrator, who does that function? If you haven't done it before, if your IT staff doesn't have that skill set, then you might need to hire someone with that. But it doesn't always have to be a full-time person. You need to also take advantage of managed services that are out there, right? But
Yes.
if you're implementing a system and you're using a third-party implementer, let's say a system integrator, they always offer services to um, help you out after implementation on an ongoing basis. Check those out. Take advantage of that. If you don't have in-house staff, you should lean on your um, contractors and vendors to provide that service for you. It doesn't always have to be a full-time person. What do you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's look.
Any more?
We'll talk.
We aren't using it to the full potential. Look, that with new software solutions that are in the cloud, that are software as a service, new functionalities are released, every quarter, in
Oh
some
yeah.
cases every week. So will you always ever use the full functionality? Maybe not. So how do you define that, right? And it's a confession, so it means someone's hurting somewhere. And if you're not using it to the full capacity, again, define it. What does that mean to you? Compare it with what's available in the system, and if you want to use it, work out a plan to turn those modules on, turn those functionalities on. You may have to bring in the vendor again to configure that for you. It's not such a bad thing to not use 100% of the capabilities.
Definitely agree.
I think we're out of confessions. Let's do this one.
Yes.
I thought this could be done with one solution. So there's a raging debate on the market about ERP all-in versus best of breed. Best of breed means you bring in the best solution for that function, and with modern technology and APIs, it should seamlessly work with other systems. So replacing an older monolithic system with another newer monolithic system is an option. You have tons of vendors in this hall that do it. Oracle, Infor, Tyler, they have all-in systems, SAP, and then you have best-of-breed solutions like Workday, UKG that do specific things, and they will bring in the partners and other vendors. If you want to release an RFP that covers all your functional areas, these providers will bring in the best-of-breed solutions that work best with their product, with their core product. So you can do it with one product, you can do it with multiple products, and we're engaged in projects that have both flavors. So implementation was a nightmare.
Yes.
Yeah, it can. It's a really hard process to go through. Like I said, everyone has day jobs, and if you're taking this on yourself without bringing in an expert third party to project manage or run the implementation as the buyer's representative, it can be really hard because it is a multi-year process. Many times, it becomes elongated because of bandwidth issues on the client's end. Sometimes the vendors have issues, and so it's a multi-year process. You need to plan for it effectively, efficiently, and keep an eye on the project as it goes on. And it no matter what system, because it is a transformational uh, process for your organization and your people, it is hard. But uh, picking the right product and the right vendor and the right partners that fit your organization is key because that makes it easier, and it doesn't have to be a nightmare. I think we're done. Oh, sold on industry expertise that wasn't real. Okay, so the sales process can be daunting for our clients. And how do they know if what's being shown in the demo? Fine, you can see the product and you can click around and you're talking to the system implementer or the product, the vendor itself. And all of these big vendors have done work with all kinds of industries. So they have the experience. Now, it depends on what teams are assigned to you and how deep you need that expertise to be. Keep in mind, not everybody needs to be an expert in the industry,
Correct.
right? Not everybody on the team that's serving you needs to be a deep expert, but you need subject matter experts on the software providers team that know the industry. And almost all vendors have that, right? They wouldn't be in business if they didn't have the expertise to serve a particular industry, say K through 12 or airports. So that's by default. But so this confessional says the vendor didn't bring the right expertise for the industry. I wonder what the story is. It can be true, but it also depends on your perception, your perspective, and what your expectations are. Going back to defining the scope, putting it in the RFP, and making sure you're holding providers accountable to that throughout the implementation process.
Absolutely.
All right, I think we're good on the confessional wall. Oh, what is that one?
Yeah, it was. I kept silent during vendor demos because I didn't want to uh, basically sound like they were complaining or sound like they were not understanding a gap in front of them.
Well, it says
Yep.
Jeremy's so nice. It says I kept silent during the vendor demo because I didn't want to sound dumb in front of the group. This is a common issue. You're not alone. Whoever wrote that confessional, uh, but that is your chance to ask questions. Look, you're doing public procurement. There's a cone of silence when the RFP is on the street. The if the software provider has never seen you or you haven't seen them, what other chance do you have to ask questions? That is the best chance. Nobody's going to accuse of you of sounding dumb. And by the way, we do that to ourselves, right?
Oh, yeah.
No question is dumb because this is a critical moment in the selection process. It's a critical project for your organization. Ask away, ask them anything. And at Avero, we're trying to solve the problem of how do we work under the rules of the procurement process and give our clients the opportunity to interact efficiently with the vendor community because it's a problem that we're hearing from both ends. The software providers need access to potential clients to answer their questions, and clients need to take that opportunity to really dig into whether or not this product fits your organization or not. And the only way you can do it is by asking questions.
Absolutely.
I think we are good
That's
on
all
the
of them.
confessional wall.